the CHED-recognized, ISI, Scopus-indexed research presentation and publications of all faculty and employees in all campuses and branches of the university. Fourth, to incrementally increase the research incentives, privileges, and awards for all faculty and employees who do quality scientific research internally and externally. And, finally, to remarkably widen the university's networks and linkages for internationalization. The services that are offered by RMO include paper presentation financial assistance, publication and citation incentives, thesis and dissertation grant, invention disclosure incentives, merit promotion, University Ethics Board,
Gawid to class,
Gawid Lathala, College or Branch Research Fund, internally funded researches and externally funded researches. Paper presentation financial assistance. The university shall provide financial assistance to paper presenters in national and international conference. For international conferences, the university shall provide for the actual expenses, provided that the amount of financial assistance for conferences held within ASEAN, Hong Kong and Taiwan, shall not exceed 90,000 pesos, and 120,000 pesos for conferences held outside ASEAN, Hong Kong and Taiwan. For national conferences, the usual financial assistance allowed by circulars or guidelines issued by the Department of Budget and Management and the Commission on Audit shall apply. Merit promotion. This provides an opportunity for faculty members to avail of merit promotion scheme on the basis of research publication and citation. In this promotion scheme, a faculty member who has published a paper or is cited in national or international refereed or peer-reviewed journals, ISI or Scopus indexed, shall be entitled to either one rank or sub-rank promotion. Only permanent regular faculty members and regular administrative employees with at least a master's degree can avail of this scheme. Point and credit system. Full papers or research outputs published in a CHED or PASIC recognized national journal publication shall earn the applicant 10 points. For papers or research outputs published in a Web of Science or Scopus indexed international journal publication, applicant shall earn 20 points. In the case of multiple authorship, the points shall be divided among the number of authors of the journal article. If the applicant's research work article was cited in a CHED or PASIC recognized national journal publication, the applicant shall earn 5 points, and if the applicant's research work article was cited in a Web of Science or Scopus indexed international journal publication, the applicant shall earn 10 points. In the case of multiple authorship, the points shall be divided among the number of authors of the journal article. To be considered for a one-rank and sub-rank promotion, an applicant for the instructor sub-ranks must earn at least 20 points. An applicant for the assistant professor rank and sub-ranks must earn at least 30 points. An applicant for the associate professor rank and sub-ranks must earn at least 40 points. An applicant for professor sub-ranks must earn at least 50 points.
Gawid to class,
Outstanding Researcher Award. Who are eligible for nomination? The nominee must be a regular faculty member of the university regardless of rank or a permanent administrative employee for at least 3 years at the time of nomination. The Vice President for Research, Extension, and Development through the Research Management Office (RMO) will call for nominations from January to the second Friday of March each year. A Gawid to class awardee shall receive 100,000 pesos and a plaque. In case of a tie, the cash prize shall be divided among the winners. Each finalist shall receive 10,000 pesos and a certificate of recognition. Gawid Lathala, International Publication Excellence Award. The university introduces the annual Gawid Lathala Publication Excellence Award to recognize PUP leaders in various academic fields through a number of high-quality publications. To qualify for Gawid Lathala Pilak na Medalya, the applicant must have 2 to 3 publication and at least 2 journals. To qualify for Gawid Lathala Gintong Medalya, the applicant must have 4 or more publication and 3 or more journals. The applicant with the highest number of publications, 4 and above, may automatically be awarded 50,000 pesos. In a case of a tie, each recipient will receive the award and the full incentive of 50,000 pesos. Other recipients with lesser number of publications shall likewise be awarded using the following scheme. University Ethics Board. All external researchers who seek University Research Ethics Board certification clearance to conduct research works in the university shall pay a corresponding fee. Graduate researchers, commissioned or non-commissioned, shall pay 2,000 pesos. Senior high school and undergraduate researchers shall pay 150 pesos. For every complaint about research honesty and integrity of each bona fide student and/or permanent employee of the university, they shall pay 5,000 pesos. Publication and citation incentives. To increase research works for broader dissemination and utilization, the university offers incentives for publication and citation in Web of Science or Scopus indexed, CHED recognized, JIP Type A and B journals, PASIC accepted, reputable journals, and PUP institutionalized or university journals. Amount of support and incentives. For each publication, the applicant shall receive the following incentives. For each citation, the applicant shall receive the following incentives. Thesis and dissertation grant. The university shall provide thesis and dissertation grant to full-time faculty members and permanent administrative employees after the completion of a graduate degree. The amount of grant shall depend on the graduate level completed. The amount of grant for master's thesis level is 40,000 pesos. And for dissertation level, the amount of grant is 60,000 pesos. College or branch research fund. College or branch research fund may be utilized in any college or branch research, capacity building initiative, local scholarly work publication and research capability building participation upon the approval of the President, through the Vice President for Finance, the Vice President for Research, Extension, and Development, and the concerned sector Vice President, as recommended by the Dean or Director. Each college or branch research fund project shall have a budget not more than 100,000 pesos per college or branch, and shall only cover the maintenance and other operating expenses as evaluated, approved, and recommended by the RMO. Externally funded researches. A financial assistance sponsored by external fund providers is awarded to a research proposed by colleges, branches, and research institutes or centers. The grant may cover, wholly or partly, the cost and/or other incidental expenses relating to the conduct of the proposed research. The grant also covers honoraria, operating expenses, and costs of books and equipment. Internally funded researches. A financial assistance sponsored by the university is awarded to a research proposed by college or branch or research institute or center, which is aligned to the university research agenda and advantageous to the university in terms of publication, commercialization, intellectual property, and policy making. The grant may cover, wholly or partly, the cost and/or other incidental expenses relating to the conduct of the proposed research. The grant also covers honoraria, operating expenses, and costs of books and equipment. Other funding support includes the reduction of teaching load and night service pay. The lead proponent shall be entitled to a maximum of 12 units reduction of teaching load and 6 units for the co-proponents. All proponents may be entitled to a maximum of 3 units or hours of temporary substitution load. Qualified part-time faculty members who are not employed in other agencies shall carry a maximum of 12 units of part-time teaching load. They shall be allowed, however, to handle temporary substitution, depending on the nature and scope of their participation in the research project. Invention disclosure incentives. The invention disclosure incentives is granted to inventors, researchers, faculty members, students, and administrative staff of the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. The main purpose of the invention disclosure incentives is to encourage innovation and increase patenting activity in the university. Incentive schemes. For faculty members, administrative personnel, and students who were granted certificates of utility model or industrial design, a fixed amount of 10,000 pesos is awarded per technology. For publication of patent in IPO Gazette, a fixed amount of 15,000 pesos is awarded, and an amount of 25,000 pesos is awarded for the issuance of patent certificate. A total fixed amount of 50,000 pesos is awarded per patent invention. Faculty members or administrative personnel are entitled to 1 rank vertical promotion for any sole patent invention, once a patent certification was issued or granted, and 1-step increment for any sole utility model or industrial design, once a certification was issued or granted by the Bureau of Patents, Intellectual Property of the Philippines. For more information, visit www.pup.edu.ph/research/RMO or contact your respective faculty researcher.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Pathways to Refereed Journal publication. The Pathways to Refereed Journal publication is a 5-day training workshop designed to focus on international research publication, which intends to increase research publications in reputable academic journals, particularly those indexed in Scopus and Web of Science. The training is divided into 7 clusters in the field of education, engineering, architecture, and built environment, or 5ea8d, business and finance, science, mathematics, and statistics, or SMS, humanities, language, and communication, or HULACOM, and computer science, information system, and technology, or CSIST, and of course, the social science strand. Today, we will welcome you to the cluster of education. I am sure that we will be learning something from our distinguished guest speaker. And I am your host, Rock Brian B. Matias from the College of Tourism, Hospitality, and Transportation Management. And I will be guiding you all. For this week's training. To give us her opening message, let us all welcome the Vice President for Research, Extension, Planning, and Development, Dr. Ana Ruby P. Gapasin.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. It is with great pride to welcome you all to one of our university's most important research capability building projects. To the esteemed members of the Research Management Office, led by its very hard-working director, Dr. Jackie Urrutia, and to its very dynamic team, we have Research Support Center Head Chief Randy Sagun, Research Evaluation and Monitoring Center Chief Emirate Format Jr., Center for Research Ethics, headed by Hazel Somada, and Center for Research Dissemination and Linkages, headed by Daryl A. Cornell, along with all our faculty researchers from the College of Education and faculty researchers from our branches and satellite campuses. And to the organizing committee members, thank you for all your hard work and commitment. Most importantly, my sincerest gratitude to our invited speaker, who will be properly introduced in a moment, for accepting our invitation to share his experiences and expertise in journal publication. To publish is to make a certain content available to the general public. This means that we all intend to share our generated knowledge with the public, even though we know that this will be under the scrutiny of the public. Our selfless act of sharing comes with an enormous and sustained process and cycle, which will be shared with us in this 5-day training workshop. The role of academia, primarily academic research, is vital. Hence, we are expected to work harder to push the boundaries of knowledge towards the continuous improvement of our society. The bottom line is the cultivation of a research environment governed by the principles of incorruptibility, ethics, and responsibility to boost research citations and successful publications in high-impact journals. We are committed to pursuing active adherence to the ethical principles and professional standards essential for the responsible practice of research. As part of the OBP REPT and RMO's continuing commitment, we are optimistic that this webinar will optimize your research papers, cultivate productive research teams, and research integrity in scientific publication in the academy. I encourage the TUP community to value integrity in our character. Let it permit all our works to be manifested, all our research activities. Thank you very much for joining us in this endeavor. Isang mainit na pagbati po sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat, VP Kapasin, sa isang warm message for our participants and to our guest speaker. To introduce our speaker, may I call on the faculty researcher from the College of Human Kinetics, Mr. Jefferson F. Serrano.
Good morning, everyone. Magandang buhay po sa lahat. Our speaker is presently the University Director of Knowledge and Technology Management of Cagayan State University, Tuguegarao City, Philippines since 2018. He is currently occupying the faculty rank of Associate Professor 3. He started charting his career from a private elementary school teacher to a faculty member and administrator of Cagayan State University. He obtained his PhD in Educational Management 2013 at the age of 23. His Master of Arts in Education major in Educational Management 2011, BEd Generalist 2010, and BSEd English 2013. He is one of the top 1,000 scientists in the Philippines on the Alper-Dogger Scientific Index of 2022. Having an H index and an I-10 index of 9, the AD index is a productivity ranking that lists productive scientists in a given area, discipline, university, and country, and can guide the development of meaningful incentives and academic policies. He has published 30 research articles indexed in Scopus, Clarivate Analytics, and Asian Citation Index journals. He presently serves as editor and reviewer of various SSCI Web of Science, Index, and Scopus Elsevier journals. He presented research at various international, national, and regional research conferences and symposia, and was awarded Best Research Presenter and Best Research Paper Awardee. In 2018, he was named Distinguished Faculty Researcher, Social Science category, at Cagayan State University. He was awarded the Best Undergraduate Thesis Mentor for the Social Science category in 2022 search for the Best Undergraduate Thesis and Mentor Award last July 17, 2022 at Cagayan State University. On research mentoring, he is an active resource speaker and trainer of action research, research methodology, and research publication at local, national, and international research conferences, seminars, and trainings. In research networking and collaboration, he has been engaged in international and institutional funded research project of Cagayan State University in partnership with the government's different agencies, such as Department of Science and Technology and Department of Agriculture in Region 2. He is an associate member of the National Research Council of the Philippines under Division 1, Governmental, Educational, and International Policies, and has been conferred as a Fellow of the Royal Institute of Educators, Singapore. He finished a leadership development program for higher education institution in the Philippines conducted by CIMEO Southeast Asian Regional Center of Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture in partnership with the head HEAD Foundation Singapore from April to June 2021. It's my pleasure to welcome our speaker, Dr. Gilbert C. Magulod Jr.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir Jeff, for that wonderful presentation of our guest speaker. So, good morning, Dr. Gilbert Magulod.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Magandang umaga po.
So,
morning.
yes, and we are happy to see you here via Zoom. No, so this is actually our fourth year wherein we divided the different clusters of the university for the publication of their research paper. And for the session 1, Dr. Magulod will be discussing about the nature of education research and how we formulate the research questions and objective. Take it away, Doc Gilbert.
Ayan po. Okay, so maraming salamat. Of course, my appreciation to Dr. Daryl Cornell, the project head of Pathways 2022, the Director for Research Management Office, Dr. Jackie Urrutia, the Vice President for Research Development and Extension, Dr. Ana Rupica Pasin, and most especially the University President of the Polytechnic University, Dr. Manuel Muhi. So it's a rare opportunity to have an academic cross-pollination of research knowledge and skills this morning, because I will be your speaker for 5 days, and I hope we will be able to achieve what it should be achieved for these specific days. And we hope that we will be able to come up with the better platforms for our research for our research papers to be published the International Reference Journal. So maraming salamat po. Actually, this is I'd like to present to you the outline, okay, the course syllabus for this session. The Pathways to Reference Journal in the Field of Education is starting from July 4 to 8. So ako po yung unang speaker, and I'd like to present the course content for this specific session. So for the day 1, that will be on July 4, I will be discussing today the nature of education research or action research, the writing technical articles for scientific publication, and we will have the walkthrough session in writing the introduction of the research papers you have, particularly on the review of the research gap as prerequisite for writing the introduction and background of the article, the literature review, and the theoretical framework of the paper. So ito po yung outcome, no? Yung objective natin sa araw na ito. For the day 2, which will be tomorrow, we will talk on the methodologies of your research papers. the research design, the context, the instrument, data collection, and the approaches on data analysis, whether quantity or quality or mixed methods. And on July 6th, that will be the discussion of the results and discussion section, writing your RDS, the summary, conclusion, limitation, implication, recommendation. And for day 4, that will be the time for each participant to present the research outputs. Kung hindi po kakayanin ng individual presentation, gawin po natin group output yan. Then on July 5, that will be the session on the process of submitting your research papers to Scopus and Web of Science index journals using their standards, as well as formatting the research papers you have for possible chances of publication. So magandang umaga po. I'd like to tell you that the learning outcomes for this training are the following: to package your research outputs using the Emirate Format for publication, then to update also each of one of you with the trends, the pathways, and technology tools in preparing your journal article for publication, and ultimately the submission of your journal articles for publication and in Web of Science and Scopus Index journals. So ito po yung mga sana makamit natin at the end of this 5-day session. Wag po kayong magsasawa. Okay, so let's begin with the first session. The nature of research or an education research or action research. So siguro po lahat naman po kayo dito ay mga teachers, mga education, kasi sa education unit po tayo. So yun po yung pag-uusapan natin. Then ultimately there will be an activity, there will be a workshop, no? May lecture po muna tayo, lecture on the theories, then the next part of the session will be the practical application of what you have learned, wherein you will be bridging the theory to practice. And hopefully, no, ang outcome natin is ma-improve natin yung mga research papers ninyo nang sa ganon. I was intently listening kanina, no? Ang ganda pala ng incentive na binibigay ng Polytechnic University of the Philippines sa mga faculty members ninyo. So, nagising ako kanina that even paper presentation, publication, ma-assure siya na Scopus at Web of Science agad-agad na ma-process ang incentive ng faculty members. So also part of my experience also here is to learn, to benchmark with you, as you will also learn from me and we share the same experience. So there will be a cross-pollination of knowledge and skills with regard to research publication in the field of education. So magandang umaga po. So the session 1 will be on the nature of research or education research, the writing technical articles for scientific publication, and review on the research gaps as prerequisite for writing the introduction and background of the article, and writing the purposes of the study. Okay, so to begin with, is that I'd like to tell you, no, that action research, kasi kung teacher naman tayo, no, I could just contextualize it in the concept of action research. So many of you are conducting research that are fundamental research in its nature. But kung teacher po kasi tayo, dito tayo kumukuha ng mga problema sa buhay. Ano ba yung daily experiences natin wherein we experience those problems, encounter problems and difficulties in teaching that need to be addressed by way of scientific investigation or research. So, being a teacher, it requires us to become a teacher researcher. This is actually by work in 2017, that being a teacher researcher or teacher research is a systematic inquiry by the teacher in the practice to improve the teaching and learning. Even in the college classroom, even in the high school or in the elementary, and when we are teachers, we are professors, we are dealing with the students. And we are also, addressing the concerns. And by way of addressing these concerns, scientific yung process natin. That requires us to do research na kailangan nating i-publish. So Bradford defines research, action research as action and reflection between theory and the practice. Another concept is that Rowell said that by way of research or action research, we transform, we initiate change, we improve the system, we improve the teaching learning process, we improve the education sector. Okay, so it requires a critical reflection to address the problem. In like manner, kung action research ang pinag-uusapan natin, sabi ni Cohen and Mannion, it can be a small-scale intervention, but it does not mean that it will not be published. But so long as it has the outcomes of research na tinatawag natin, it will be considered as a contribution to the body of knowledge. And of course, through research, we enact change, and enacting change is not easy. It takes time, patience, communication, and implementation skills. But mind you, if you are a teacher researcher, then kung meron ka ng isang publication, ibig sabihin yan, that's the beginning to profess. That's the beginning. That's the reason why we call teachers as somebody who can profess or who are contributors to the body of knowledge. So this is in the landscape of higher education sector. Okay, so when we talk of action research and fundamental research, they may have different aspects, but isa lang po naman ang patutunguhan yan. Do action research yan or fundamental research, napapublish po yan, which is the goal of this session. So as to the fundamental research, it's actually looking at the facts and establishing universal truths. This is your hard context of research na ginagawa natin sa university. But when you do research also in the classroom, it becomes part of the solution to the prevailing educational problem, no? That can be categorized as an action research. The other one is, as to the context of the problem, it fundamental research, it is conductive in the context of general circumstances in the field of education. While for action research, it can be problems related to a specific school. So as to the context of the problem, we try to look at the locale of your research studies, where you conducted the study. So in an action research, it can be in a classroom, but for a fundamental research, that can be done in one institution, in a university-wide, college-wide, or in a region-wide, or district context, district level. As to the nature of the problem, when we talk of fundamental research, we talk of the theories to be validated, the theories that are wide, that needs to be the theory that needs to be explored further. But for action research, it could be practical and narrow. So as to the sampling, definitely kung fundamental research, we need actually the sciences of sampling. We need also to understand the context of the reasons why we get them as samples, the validity, the reliability of everything, particularly the instrument and the representation of the sample. But for action research, it can be limited to number of individuals. As to the outcome and the findings for the fundamental research, like the evaluative research we are actually conducting in the university, they can be universally used for policy adoption, for policy implementation. But for action research, it has a release which is related to the specific school only. Okay, so as to the fundamental research on the duration, I don't know if in your university, when we implement research, is we define a research in our university, it should be implemented within 6 months, within a semester. But for an action research, it may not take you long time, but the duration can be maximum 1 session and limited ang duration niya. For the process, for the fundamental researches we are conducting, they can be rigid, technical, and they really need the technical expertise of people. While in action research is just to become flexible, you may not need to become technical. No technical knowledge may be required. For a researcher, For the fundamental research, anyone, not necessarily of the school, but for an action research, teachers belong to the same school. As to the instrument to be used, fundamental research needs tools that are reliable, valid, that are authentic. But for action research, they can be used for teacher-made tests, self-made questionnaire. And for data analysis, fundamental research requires complex statistics. And for action research, they can be used for general statistics, like mean, frequency, and other forms of qualitative research. So I presented this because I want you to understand that in the classroom, in the context of education, one may not need to use highfalutin and sophisticated statistical tools to come up with a research to be published. But what is important is the research has its purpose for utility. So pwede siyang ma-publish later on, pwede siyang ma-adapt. After all, the measurement of research is not actually how hard the statistics you are using, but its applicability and utility for the improvement of the educational landscape. Okay po? Moving on. So one thing that concerns me when you talk of education research is the problem sensing. How do we sense the problem? Titignan po natin mamaya na ang context natin when you talk of research publication should start with the gaps in literature. But in practical life, in actual living, problem sensing is, or are the problems you encountered in the delivery of instruction, can be in the new normal, or in the now normal, or in beyond. Okay? Second, what are the critical and less critical problems? And how do you see these problems in the school operation? Kahit po naman nasa college level tayo, we are still teachers, we are still professors, and we are encountering problems that need to be addressed. Particularly, our learners are the primary customers. So how do we sense the problem? So these are the concerns now. I hope naman na because in your program, I read it that the participants have already their research papers. Meron naman na po kayo yung mga research papers niyo na iayusin po natin for publication. But I would like to remind you that when you talk of educational research, when you talk of research, they should always be based on problem diagnosis and gaps identification. So somehow in the context of educational research, they can be the categories of educational research topics. Your research may be focusing on the classroom environment, particularly on the safe and orderly environment. It can be related to developing learning materials or instructional materials. It can also be related to the classroom management, managing the students' behavior in the online classroom, comparing the behavior of students in the offline and online. It can also be related to instructional methods or pedagogies. Next, the psychology of learning, because the learners are the center of the educative process. All efforts must be exerted by the teacher should be on the total development of the learners. And some can be related to the assessment or evaluation of a program, assessment on a tracer study, assessment or evaluative study on the process of the attainment of the immediate program or graduate attributes of our graduates. So problem diagnosis requires us to define ano ba yung problema na ina-address ng ating research. So these are the following considerations. So I'd like you to look at this one and try to look on your personal responses. So what is the topic? Ano yung topic ng papers ninyo? What you want to learn from the topic is contributory to the how you will package your papers later on. What are your plans to do in order to address the topic? To whom will the outcome of your study be important? No? Who will read your research? Who will adapt your research? How much time do you participate in the study requirement? How difficult do you anticipate the study will be conducted? And do you foresee any ethical concerns? Just a sharing is that for most of the state universities and colleges, lalong-lalo na po kung ang universities natin ay agricultural university, there's a discrepancy between a social research to an agricultural research. That sometimes, no, those people in the social research or those people in the educational research are not being given the priorities concerning that the university is pushing its niche on agricultural research. So most of this is a reminder that if we are in the education sector, we should be inspired by these challenges, that this should not hamper us to do research and publish more, but this should be an inspiration for us that our research papers must be able to achieve outcome. Because if we try to look at the applied research compared to a social research, there's actually a discrepancy. For an applied or technological research, when they are conducting a study and that research has been developed, the outcome is already there. But for social research or educational research, the outcome may not be given in an immediate way because most of our researches for social research should be based on policy. So in short, to complete the cycle of the research, we should not see publication as one of the conduit to attain the outcomes of research, but we should see publication here, this session, as one of the fulfilling measures to have a utility of a research paper, to have a wider policy adoption so that our research papers in the educational sector or in education department or education unit will be utilized for policy, for institutional development, or for system development. Okay? So I hope we share the same context na yun po kasi yung nakikita natin na concern kung yung pinag-uusapan natin ay social research or educational research compared to applied researches. So sabi nga, no, tayong mga teacher inside the classroom are the problem solvers. So we need to address how can we put a stronger commitment to publish, to do research and publish more in the context of educational topics. Okay. So when we frame, remember that just a prelude is that our research or action research, our research publications must be relevant and meaningful. Okay. Second, you must have a strong interest or passion for the topic. Educators at your grade level should be related to your field. Number 4, your research must be literature-based to support the understanding of the existing knowledge. And 5, were you able to develop a concise statement of problem around the topic? So I got it from Sage Publication, a well-known publisher in Web of Science and Scopus. Moving on. So what's the expectation versus reality? First, when we do research, is creating new knowledge. But the problem becomes a concern when, or the concern is actually the problem when the knowledge is no value unless you put it into practice. So if we try to go back, no, we have so many researches to be published, to be conducted in the education unit, but have we ever considered its utility? So one of the conduit for its utility is to let our papers be published. All right. So what are our opportunities here? As researchers, we do not contribute to the existing body of knowledge, but we address the practical gaps and concerns of the society to research-based information, systems, processes, tangible products, and technologies. We also look at how our researches to be translated into something that can improve the standards of community, improve the policy of the education, and deliver better services for the educational sector. And for schools and universities, this is actually the new trend. The focus from being a research university is somewhat being outdated because we are now moving into an entrepreneurial university. So to move into an entrepreneurial university, let's see to it that the outputs of our research should be able to address the outcomes of improving the life of the community, providing jobs and incomes to people, and creating income for the university. Kaya ang magandang konteksto natin is sa mga teachers dito, in what way that our research, when they were published, were they converted or translated into a book? Were they translated into an instructional material? And with that instructional material, we were able to come up with a book authored by you. That book can be called research-based. So yun po kasi ang measurement natin sa output at sa outcome. All instructional materials should be developed, they should be research-based. So that's for teacher education. Moving on. So what are the challenges now is that results and findings have shown that there is a poor dissemination. For example, availability and appropriation of the research findings. Despite the greatest awareness that by way of research, they can solve education's problems and enhancing the quality of life of the citizens. This is based on DUSE in 2011. And it is therefore means that research outputs have not been able to translate into development indices inappreciably and consequently have not helped in building the education sector for sustainable national development. So this is actually our challenge na sana ay mag-iwan sa atin ng inspiration so that our research papers will attain its full utility and usefulness for community development or educational development. There is this trend which I got is that noon, sabi natin, publish or perish. That's actually the old paradigm of research utilization. Because today, the trend is commercialize or vaporize. Bertrand Russell in 1951 in his book, El Impacto de la Ciencia, la Sociedad, which says, if we lose sight of our social contract to the public, then we lose sight of the purpose of research. And the purpose why we are doing a published research output is to have the cycle of research. One cannot become an international researcher when the research paper is not published, and when that research paper is not published, it's not being cited, it's not being used, it's not being translated to policy, is a reminder for us that our research outputs should address the concerns and they should be adapted or utilized by the community of practice. So kung teachers tayo, ang mag-a-adapt ng research natin ay mga kapwa natin teachers. Okay, so take note, the paradigm shift from publish or perish to commercialize or vaporize. Okay, so what is the situation we have now? Take note of it that 70% of research papers, vacant theses or dissertations generated by undergrad and graduate students, teachers, and professors are not utilized. Second, scholarly outputs are buried deeply in reports and not transmitted into real practice, and they are commonly called as file drawer problem. And many relevant research results did not reach their target audience, and this kind of culture is existing in academic community. Okay, so meaning to say, we try to understand now that improving the research papers, kahit po siya na-publish, it should carry the purpose of utility for the community of practice. It's not a matter of being cited now, but a matter of utilizing your research for improvement. Okay, so there is what we call impact science approach. Once we accept that research and development should be seen as tool for societal change, we start formulating our research that will generate impact in the future. And one strategy here is to think the way we think of research by starting with the end in mind and identify what you want to achieve, then work backwards. Okay, so when we talk of publication, it requires us to look more on the science aspect of our research for utilization. Okay, let me remind you that we are in the state university and we are guided with the outcomes of research. We call it as the 7 P's. Publication is just one of the outcome of research, wherein if an author was able to publish a research in Web of Science or Scopus, it's just one way for you to attain one outcome of research. Second, see to it that the research you conducted must form part as a legal document wherein one can gain a financial importance, financial use of your intellectual property. That's why if it's in education research, you publish it, you develop a book from that, then it's a sort of attaining the second outcome, which is patent. Third, research to policy outcomes. Research outputs should have its extension work, wherein your research outputs, kung education tayo, were they able to go back. The results were able to go back to the community of practice, to the teachers, wherein you have the dissemination and the school was able to implement changes in the school by basing from the research you conducted. So I have been conducting many researches and I have published many researches, and ito po yung mahina tayo. Mahina po na sometimes research were just published, wala nang follow-up. So a way for us to have a good follow-up of our research is see to it that we should come up with a policy brief of our institutional research, education research, or social research, wherein the university or the administration or the policy or regulatory bodies of the agencies or the school will be able to find its utility and usefulness. Of course, for product development, commercial value of the outputs you have, okay? Does your research output were able to provide people services, increase in the scientific workforce? Then places and partnership, facilities, networks, and enable the increased 6 P's. And lastly, planet for environmental impact. So, and today, this morning, is an attainment of the 1 piece in research, which is publication. So let me begin with how do we write technical articles for scientific publication and the roles of the journals. So let's move on. When you talk of scholarly publishing, where it counts, there are only 2 greatest databases in the world where one can publish the research outputs. They can be for Clarivate Analytics, formerly known as the Thomson Reuters ISI, and the Scopus Elsevier or the Cyverse. These 2 powerful journals are the only powerful journal databases, are the only measurement for the countries to be ranked or for the schools to be ranked on SCImago institutions ranking, the World University ranking, the Times Higher Education World University ranking, the Global Innovation Index, and the Alper-Dogger Scientific Indexing. That's why I was very happy to learn that PUP is giving much of the incentives to faculty members who were able to publish in journals that are indexed in Clarivate Analytics and Scopus Elsevier. I would like to tell you that not all journals are equal. They can be Clarivate Analytics, but not Elsevier Scopus. They can be Scopus, but not Clarivate Analytics. So what I do not know if there's a consideration that when an article is published in both Clarivate Analytics and Scopus, higher yung incentive. But in our university, the measurement is the impact factor of the journal. Okay, so these are the two powerful global indexing bodies where one can publish the research outputs. So why is Scopus Elsevier is that, you know this, because it is Cyber's Scopus and it is introduced in November 2004 in the information market. It is the largest database existing in the market for multidisciplinary scientific literature, and it contains 20,500 peer-reviewed journals from 5,000 publishers, together with 1,200 open access journals. Can be 603 publications, 500 conferences, 360 book series. For Scopus Elsevier, there is this database wherein you can check. You all knew about this one, no? Wherein you just go to www.scopus.com and you can search which journal you would like to publish your research outputs. What is good with this is they have also what we call journal article finder for Scopus Elsevier. It guides the author to submit the abstract, and the database will find appropriate journal for you to publish. Okay, so the other one is the Web of Science, which we call it as the Clarivate Analytics, no, and it has a science platform, which is a search and discovery choice for more than 7,000 academic and research institutions, funding organizations, publishing organizations in more than 100 countries, and for more than 80 countries. There is this question, a debate, which is better? Is it Scopus or Web of Science? Okay, there's a debate about this context, but let us try to look at how these things are working. Remember that for Scopus and Web of Science, both journals, if we go to higher, no, when we talk of a strong and impactful research publication, we have the concept of Bradford's law. What's Bradford's law? According to Bradford's law, relatively small number of journals publish the majority of significant scholarly results. Meaning to say, the journals that are hardcore in their nature are the journals that are accepting few articles. Meaning to say, the higher you are, the more selective you are. Okay, so the Bradford's law would tell you that not all papers for education are being accepted, but only the few papers that have passed the scrutiny of quality, credibility, and strong scientific method for publication pass through the publication. And Bradford's law understood that the essential core for journal form part as a basis for each discipline, a literature for each discipline. So they are published in relatively few journals. So there are selective journals, but mind you, not all journals are equal. There was a question which is higher: is it Web of Science or Scopus Elsevier? For the benefit of everyone, I would like to tell you that for American countries, they prefer to publish their outputs in Clarivate Analytics Web of Science. But for European countries, they prefer to publish their papers in Scopus. But when you try to look at a paper indexed in Scopus and indexed in Web of Science, we have what we call that pyramid, no? So meron tayong ranggo ng mga journals, and I hope that our research papers for education sector is that they should not be published in just a Scopus or Clarivate Analytics, but they should be published in the level of Social Science Citation Index or SSCI, AHCI, or emerging ESCI. Because when you publish your research to these levels of journals, the higher the research or the researcher would receive citations. Kesa naman mag-publish lang tayo sa Scopus lang, sa Scopus Q4, Scopus Q3, taasan natin ang level. Okay, so a way for us to put more quality and credibility to our research papers. So, moving on, we publish because we want to share our research outputs. We want to challenge. We want that our research papers will be read by the community of practice. And we would like to invite people to cite our papers, to consider our paper for policy adoption, and to have a continuation of our research to be published. Remember that one cannot fulfill the cycle of a research if one was not able to publish a research, one is not cited, one is not one research output is not utilized. Okay. Now, when we talk of research publication or research, the nature could be in the form of multidisciplinary, it could be interdisciplinary, or per disciplinary. A reminder for us that one does not live in the field of mathematics alone. One does not live in the field of English alone, but we live all together in a symbiotic and symbiosis relationship. So see to it that our research papers must be able to bear the quality that they can be used by teachers in other fields. Though we are posting here that a research publication or a research paper is field specific, at least if the context of publication we have, it can be used by other authors. And another challenge is that, another opportunity is that in a paper, when it is being conducted by research papers with different disciplines and they belong in one college, the higher the opportunity the paper will be published. Okay, moving on. So why write and publish? Because our purpose here is to tell what we have learned from our study. Okay lang po ba kayo? Okay lang po ba kayo? Okay, we conduct research to contribute to something, and we have the responsibility to contribute known and utilize our results. When particularly we publish because we want to advance the scientific and educational community of our country. Scientific papers versus science articles are two different concepts. Scientific papers are written by experts to inform other experts, published in established formats such as research journal. So what we are pursuing now is thus writing a scientific paper. And science article may be different because science articles are written for general audience to inform and entertain. And of course, it could be attributed to a development of a policy brief. So the goal for this session in 5 days will be to develop and to polish your papers to be called as scientific papers. Okay. Next, there are most constraints that most research reports are not being published as scientific articles, and they are not disseminated to community and therefore cannot be cited, and you cannot fulfill the cycle of becoming an international researcher. The trend today is that all research publications must be online and can be found in Google Scholar. If your research article is only published in hard book or in a physical book, the tendency is that you will not be cited by authors abroad. So the definition to become a global researcher, one should be cited, one should be recognized as authority in the field, and one should be able to have the practical utility of the research to practice. Okay, so what are the qualities of a publishable research paper? First, consider that the paper should be original, innovative, developmental, and mechanistic. When we talk of a sound research paper, it should be scientifically done. No? You know, I have been a reviewer of many research papers. Whenever I check paper, whenever I review paper, the first area which I usually look is that the methodology section. Why? Because the method section is the science-based statement of the paper. It tells if the researcher was able to follow the standard scientifically acceptable process to measure, to validate, to prove the findings or the results. Okay? Second, a publishable research paper should be technically sound if it's experimental design and as to its methodology. Sa mga education research natin dito, most of our researches, if it's experimental, it could be quasi-experimental, true experimental, utilizing the pretest posters with different interventions. Thirdly, the clarity of presentation. How clear do you present the research gap of the paper? How clear do you present the charting of the problem from the international context to the regional context, to the national context, to the local context of the study? And fourth, how does the paper, it becomes publishable if it has the value to science? Magagamit ba yan? Paano siya gagamitin? May pakinabang ba tayo dyan? And most of all, were you able to provide a paragraph in your article you are discussing? The paper is refuting or advancing a specific educational theory, educational practice, no? Or looking at its managerial and practical implications. And lastly, the return of investments to society. That when you publish that paper, will there be a pathway for you that the paper will be translated into a book? Into an instructional material, or something that can be converted into peso or investment. No? Lahat naman po na is we are investing to something. So therefore, we are looking as to how our research papers will be useful for the community. Okay, so remember that when you publish a research paper, it should have complete good quality study. Sabi niyan, good quality study, complete, starting from the introduction method, no? Because when we publish our research or thesis or dissertation, imagine the dissertation and the thesis we are conducting with that bulky book. Then when it's being published, it's just only 5 to 10 pages with 6,000 to 7,000 words only. Make time to write and analyze the review literature. When we talk of publication, one of the loopholes is that many research papers were rejected because they lack the proper literature review. I would like to emphasize after this in this slide that there should be part of your research paper wherein you must have one paragraph disclosing the gap in literature, and that gap in literature you are disclosing should be addressed or will be addressed by your research. That's why when I check a paper or when I review a paper, in the introduction section, ang lagi kong tinitignan, may paragraph ba doon sa introduction section na kahit isang paragraph lang na sinasabi niya yung research gap na ina-address at paano ina-address ng research na yung gap na yon. So later on, a part of your workshop is to identify the research gap in your research paper. Thirdly, your patience, your persistence, your open-mindedness, and again, your patience plus persistence. Okay? So just an information that when an author submits a paper, the editor will check it. If it passed through the scrutiny of the editor and the managing editor, then the publisher will go to managing units. Then it will be publish online, then it will be utilized by the users. So ito po yung editorial supply chain natin. But in each level, there will be, take note that there will be circumstances and there will be revisions of your paper, no? Because as you submit the paper in a week, babalik yung paper, may review, may initial preliminary review na siya. And part of that preliminary review is the result of the Turnitin of your paper. If it passed through the level, Turnitin. Second, there will be sort of grammar or checking on the language and the accuracy. So simple way for the journal to accept the paper is the quality of the language as well as the similarity index is low. Okay, so in the publication process, if the author will submit the paper, so kikita nyo naman po, as they submit, hanggang yan, there should always be at least 2 to 3 reviewers of your paper. And you will not know who reviewed your paper. Just take note that those who reviewed your paper are the people or the persons whom you share with you the same field of practice or specialization. Because one cannot review a science article if the respected reviewer is not expert or did not publish or have not published anything about that topic. Okay, then if it passed through the 2 levels of the reviewers, you address the comments and suggestion, pupunta yan sa editor-in-chief, then it will be published. Okay, so to sum up what I have told you, that the context today is research for development. I got this slide from the lecture of Dr. Rico Ancog, the editor-in-chief of Scopus and Web of Science Index Journal of the University of the Philippines in one of his trainings I attended. So the concept is research for development. For science, we understand the laws of the physical systems. For research, we look on the level of technical expertise over matter. And for development, we look at how these researches we are doing can be of practical use. So, isipin po natin, let's try to complete the cycle of research like the butterfly. No, like the butterfly, we will not be able to complete the cycle of the research if we will not be able to publish it and attain its citation and utility. In a very powerful journal known as Nature, it says, it is basically mastery and utilization of science and technology that distinguishes the South from the North. It's time for scientific societies in developing countries to help close the gap by talking on a higher profile. Meaning to say, how scientific societies can build better nation is that let's try to put to ambition. Let's become ambitious at the moment na ang research papers natin ay publish po natin siya sa SSCI. Wag lang siya sa Scopus lang, Scopus Q4, wag lang sa basta Web of Science na. It's time for us now to put higher level of our research that they should be published in the higher level of the pyramid, which are the journals indexed in Web of Science under SSCI, HSCI. Because those papers, those journals that are indexed in SSCI are the journals that are both indexed in Scopus and Web of Science, as well as they have the high impact factor. High impact factor equals to higher level of citations. And the more you will be recognized as expert and scientist in your career track. Okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, that ends the first segment. Let's move on to the next segment. Is on the reviewing the gaps as prerequisites for writing the introduction and background of the article. Okay. Because this afternoon will be workshop. So, again, nasabi natin kanina, scientific journals are the essential medium for scientific findings. They are the lifeblood of living and evolving science. To write and to publish is the way of life in the life of the career scientists and professors. And when we publish, They form part as new research and practical application of findings and results. It can be affected by the community and society at large. And what is lamenting now, based from the literature of Dalton, Franco, in 2012, 2014, 2014, 2010, many researches are never published and termed as file drawer problem. So how do we address all these concerns? Okay. We try to consider the scientific review. Okay. It is very important that scientific process whereby scientific experts evaluate the manuscript and provide feedback on a work, offering a recommendation of whether the work is suitable for publication. It means that when a paper is published, it passes through the scrutiny of experts. It allows the dissemination of your ideas for validation and rebuttal of existing concepts. And for publication is a form of communication. And take note that your research must bear truthfulness and trustworthiness. No? Truthfulness and trustworthiness. Because instead of making out of your publication, instead of making the farmers richer, they became poorer because you were not able to disclose the truth. Because science or research is all about science, all about truth. So all should be written in the research paper should be the truth. Okay. So again, there is these reasons why journal articles are rejected. What are the reasons why journal articles are rejected? I hope that those the research papers you have now, you are holding now, is hinahawakan nyo na siya at nakikita na ninyo kung saan doon yung hindi kayo confident. First, flaws on the research design is a problem. Meaning to say, if the research design is not acceptable or is not congruent to the objectives of your study, that will be rejected. Second, manuscript organization. Pakitignan nga po yung initial checking ng manuscript nyo kung na-imrad siya, meron ba siyang purposes of study, may data analysis section ba siya, may results and discussion section ba siya. And of course, conclusion. Eschela Nweke in 2013 studied the common errors in manuscripts submitted to medical science journals, showed that most of the papers have crucial flaws in every section of the manuscript. And 68% have problems in the introduction. Introduction pa lang, 68% na sila. 86% have flaws in the methods and material, and 71% in discussion section. Why I presented this one? Take note that the scientific measurement for a paper to be qualified for publication is the strong methodology. If you not have a strong methodology, it affects everything. Second, the introduction must be able to present the research gap that you are addressing. And you cannot come up with a good discussion if you have flaws in your introduction and methods. So, ano lang yan. Meaning to say, in Filipino term, ang sakit ng kalingkingan ay sakit ng buong katawan. Okay? So, meaning to say, kung may sakit sa method mo, talagang may COVID na yung buong paper mo. Kung hindi mo na-identify yung research gap sa introduction, it's already asymptomatic to a sickly research paper, then hindi mo na siya ma-accept later on. So, to become confident to the research papers we are conducting, we should be able to package the research very well. Very well. So errors are manifold and various. And I hope I will be able to transfer the knowledge and skills with the 5-day training you have with me until July 8. Okay. So meaning to say, what is the journal quality level? What makes a high quality journal? They are trusted and respected by community it serves. There is this issue of scopus nowadays. No, this is not to destroy, but sometimes Scopus is already the listing journals. Despite giving many submitting the requirement for accreditation of the journal. So, ang daming issue. In fact, may mga journal na lagi na siyang natatanggal because when a journal is delisted in Scopus or in Web of Science, it will take for the journal 3 years to apply. So, imagine kung nag-submit tayo doon at nasira, nawala yung paper, the problem is we lost the opportunity of getting better opportunities or higher level of credibility. Ang ganda-ganda ng paper mo, na-publish mo lang kasi sa mga Scopus or sa mga Web of Science na nasa level ng Q3, Q4. Ito kasing nasa level ng Q4, Scopus, ito yung mga journal na bagong pasok or mga journal na mediocre. Okay lang. But if you wish to publish our research into the higher level, choose SSCI, choose Web of Science. Second is that they are organized and run to a high editorial peer review standards. You were informed more every now and then about the status of your paper. You are being provided with the link, and you are provided with the portal, you are provided with the dashboard. In that way, the transparency of the paper review is there. Emphasis on the quality and trustworthiness of the content, transparency process of the authors and the readers, evidence of utility by way of citation matrix. Meaning to say, if the journal has high impact factor, publish with that journal, because the higher you will be known as expert or professor in the field. As trusted and respected publisher adhering to the publication ethics. And it should be vetted by Scopus and Thomson Reuters. And we are very lucky in the Philippines that we have journals both indexed in Web of Science and Scopus. So next is why publish. You know this one for your contribution to scholar, to the body of knowledge. Prerequisite for grant funding. I do not know if your research papers, the research papers that should be published should pass through the research department. Kasi sa amin po, ang practice namin, hindi po namin hinahayaan na makapag-publish, or we just do not recognize the publication of our faculty member if it's not sanctioned by the university or did not pass through any of the following. First, in-house review. Second, special order to implement the project. So, because we try to see that those really published papers were really the sanctioned outputs of the university. Yun po kasi yung measurement natin sa PBB at SOC leveling. And of course, third is developing reputation, and it's your scientific obligation. Meaning to say, it's for our career progression. So it's for career progression, and you have publications when you submit for external funding or proposal, and they saw your credibility as an author or as a researcher, the higher chances of being funded by the government's agencies or external funders. Okay, and we also give incentive in our university. We also give incentive to those faculty members who were able to generate research funds outside. For example, Dr. Rocky Brian Matias was able to get a funding of research from other agency amounting to 2 million. We give 1% from the admin cost to be his incentive also. So in that way, the question is, this has been a problem which siguro parehas din lang na tayo ng concern, is that when we push a high impact publication, the higher the fee. No? Bradford's law. The higher the fee. Kasi mas mataas, the higher the fee, the costly it is. But one strategy in our university so that we can fund the publication of our faculty members to high impact journals is that they should be external funding, externally funded research. Kasi kung externally funded research, kahit mataas yung publication fee mo, sasagutin na yan ng external agency. So, ang bibigyan naman ng university ay incentive. Okay? So, what to publish? I hope you are holding now your research papers. Were you able to publish your, you will be able to publish your papers if they are new and original. Meaning to say, new or original results or methods. Second, they were reviews or summaries of a particular subject. And manuscript that advances the knowledge and understanding in certain field. They are publishable. And what not to publish are reports of no scientific interest, out of date work, wherein you conducted that research in 1992 as part of your externally funded or dissertation, and you publish this day, no? Hindi na siya pwede. No? 5 years lang po. And duplication of previous to publish or incorrect or unacceptable conclusion. I want to hear from the audience. Do we have concern here or meron po ba kayong katanungan before we proceed to the next slide? Because I as if I am dominating really the session. Okay lang po ba kayo?
You may chat your questions in our chat box po, or you can unmute your audio po to ask Dr. Gilbert for your concerns.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, sir, si Sir pala yun. So let me proceed now to the next slide. So take note of this, that when you publish a research paper, we should be confident that we have the latest references. We conducted the research 5 years ago, and they are scientifically conducted. So to be published means your paper will be permanent in the World Wide Web. It will be read by anybody or somebody or anywhere in the world as long as they have access to internet. So the mantra today is, unless your paper is found in the Google Scholar or online publication, you are being cited. But if your paper is not being published online, mas mahirapan po tayo doon. Your paper is improved because by the intervention of the editors and reviewers, it was being proofread, and at the same time, it passed through the quality standard. Your paper is actively promoted, it becomes available to a far greater audience, and your writing is trustworthy, wherein it has been published with quality assurance stamp worthy of publication. Kaya hindi po lahat talaga ay nakakapag-publish ng research outputs. Moving on, according to Wiley, there are 3 research papers or types of research papers you can publish. So let's go back into your traditional thesis and dissertation. The practice for other countries like Malaysia, that's why napakataas po ang kanilang level ng publication. Imagine yung isang university nila, ang output ng isang university nila, kapag i-compare natin sa ating bansa sa Pilipinas, yung output ng buong Pilipinas is just only the output of one university in Malaysia. So we try to look at this, and what makes these countries are publishing so much and so high. And we found out that in a single paper, for example, in one thesis or in one dissertation, they can publish 3 to 4 research articles. First, they are publishing the synthesis articles, which is actually the chapter 2 of your traditional thesis, your review of related literature, that is publishable. And we term it as synthesis article or methodological article, or we term it as literature article. Okay, we call them as review papers. So the other practice of other countries is that before if a student to graduate in the PhD program, one must be able to have publication of the related literature. In such a way, the researcher will convince the panel that the paper is addressing a research gap or not. Okay, so ang ganda po ng practice nila. Second, the research articles. The research articles is that when you publish the actual results of your research. So if you have how many statements of the problem and you have how many discussions, tables, and results, that is publishable, and they call it as research article. And they are also publishing case studies kung mixed methods yung kanilang research. At yung pangatlo po is a methodological article. So yung methodological article is the chapter 3 of your traditional thesis, is actually your methods. Imagine that, no? So sa isang research, 3 o 4 ang kaya nilang i-publish. Because of the definition that one cannot become an expert in the field if one is not capable to do the review papers. And that's actually the basic definition for research publication nowadays. The beginning of a research problem for research publication is the gap in literature. The gap in literature. And of course, clinical articles. So in the research outputs, they were able to publish literature review articles, methodological articles, and 1 or more study results, depending on the number of the variables and depending on the statement of the problem. Because we have also ethics in publication. So what hinders us to publish many research papers in one paper is that we need to avoid the ethics concerning salami slicing. So what is this salami slicing? Okay. So this is actually a sausage in Europe that when you slice a sausage, they can slice it in a thin sheet. So meaning to say, the question there is, how do we advance the knowledge when we are only publishing thin slices at a time? So consider this one, that we try to look at the whole context of the research article, and the author should not break up the studies. Kung baga publishable yung kanyang profile of the respondents, publishable yung isang inassess niya na indicator, publishable yung isa, kinorelate niya, publishable na hindi po. Okay, so the depthness of the research should be avoided by way of avoiding scientific data slicing. So when authors break up a large study into 2 or more smaller published articles, they are called slices. And what happens in salami slicing is that a single research is divided in slices, which is least publishable unit. And what do authors, why do authors do it? It increases their publication to receive more funding. But no, there should be a context, no? Kasi kung tayo nasa state university and colleges, meron po tayong 3 uri ng research yan. Meron tayong tinatawag na research program. A research program is composed of research projects, and a research project is composed of 2 or more research studies. So kung malaki yung research program natin at component niyang napapublish, we give incentive. But we also review if it's done in salami slicing or not. So let's try to consider this one. So my suggestion here is to avoid this one. You try to look at the level of our major variables. Kung ilan yung major variables kasi natin, yun din naman yung mapapublish natin na output. So in a single study, let's try to avoid salami slicing. So what are the types of journals? Okay, wherein you can submit your research paper. Limited access journal. Limited access journal are the journals when an author is submitting a research paper, a research article, and wala pong bayad, but it's the viewer or those people who read the research paper will have access to the journal and they will pay. So they call it as limited access journal. The other one is open access journal, wherein it's the author who will pay to the journal publication, to the journal publisher, and the paper will be open for all. So the only thing, the difference is that in limited access, perhaps because only few can have access of the full article, the lower chances of being cited. But when it is an open access journal, the higher chances of being cited. And of course, the list of bills list and the cables list, the predatory journals. So marami pong biktima tayo ng mga predatory journals, and we hope to avoid this one. We hope to, so one way to avoid predatory journal is let us submit our research papers into Scopus and Web of Science belonging into the higher pyramid. Okay? So not all, ito rin po yung sinasabi ko, that not all databases are equal. So there was a debate, which is better, Scopus or Web of Science? The answer is Web of Science is higher than Scopus. So for Scopus, these are the well-known publishers. Elsevier is one of the well-known publishers of Scopus. Wiley Blackmail, Taylor Francis, Sage, Walters Kluwer, Emerald, Oxford, Inter Science, Cambridge, Bentham, IEE. For Web of Science, they belong in the tip of the pyramid because they are only few of the journals. Nandito po ang Nature, nandito po yung mga talagang high impact journals. Next to them in the Web of Science are the ESCI or the Emerging Sources Citation Index, including Scopus. And Specialized Sources Index and Open Access for Google Scholar. So ito po yung mababang uri ng mga journal natin. So how to get higher level of citations? Aspire to publish your paper in Web of Science, wherein it's both Index Scopus and Web of Science, and it will be known as SSCI. So our walkthrough session, the time is 11:10, is that will we walk you through now to the topic on the formulating the research objectives and writing the introduction of the paper. So the key to successful scientific writing is to start of the structure. And we have one general structure for a paper. We call it as the Emirate Format. The Emirate Format is the basic structure for a typical research article to be submitted for publication. Emirate stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion, where each of the major components of the article addresses different aims. I'd like to show you the figure 1 of the structural component presented by Zager and Swales. Zager in 2000 and Swales in 1990 as guide to structure the selected research articles of your paper. So this is actually, when taken in a layman's term, introduction, the question is, why did you do it? So I hope your introduction will answer, why did you conduct the study? Okay. In the method, the layman's question here is, how did you do it? For the results, what did you find out? And for discussion, what does it mean? So in layman's term, the Emirate is just a very informative paper that is only 10 or 5 to 12 to 15 pages from the original thesis or dissertation you have. Okay? So let me present to you the structural component for introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So for introduction, you should be able to present the context of the paper, the research gap, and the aim of the study. For materials and methods, study objects, the study design, the intervention, measurement, statistical analysis. For results, the results of the study based on your statement of the problem. And for discussion, should be the statement of the main result, the explanation, and limitations, generalizability, and the conclusion. So this morning, we'll talk on the structural component of the introduction section. The beginning of a research is the gap in literature for your paper to be published. So context, research gap, and aim of the study. And in a traditional thesis, this is actually your introduction and background of the study. So let's try to look at this one. For introduction, Opening statements introduce the background and nature of the problem being investigated. See to it that there should be a paragraph in your paper highlighting what is all about the problem. And the problem can be the trend, the issue, and the concern. And what is the nature of the problem being investigated? That's for the first paragraph. For the second paragraph, highlight the gaps. What are the inconsistencies? What are the controversies in the literature? What authors have found in the literature review that your paper is addressing now? Because in literature review, you should have two results. First, what authors have found in the variables or in the field, and what authors did not find. Okay? So, in your research, you are addressing the gap in literature na sinasabi, ito yung nahanap nila noon, ito yung hindi pa nahanap nila, ito naman yung pinopropose ng research ko. And there should be a paragraph explaining that in your introduction section. Second, it becomes also the practical importance that could be raised by highlighting a specific management question. In your introduction, nandito na rin yung significance of your study nyo presented in one paragraph. But do not specify the significance of your study, significant to the author, significant to the school. It should be written in a way that is scientific and generic. And of course, the summary of available literature, recent and relevant literature. So for example, in citing a research gap in a paragraph, example, previous research has addressed several aspects of author year. The recent is 3 to 5 years, and provide a synthesis of what the authors found. So I hope that when I check and when you present your paper the following days, mababasa ko na rin po yung tinatawag ninyo na literature gap. Okay? So remember that in your introduction, you are targeting to answer the area of darkness. And you are explicitly stating the gaps that the article will address and explain why addressing this is important. Discuss the main contribution of the paper and motivation or the importance of the study. So ito lang po yung mga criteria natin, no? Whenever I check the introduction section, was the paper able to present the global problem? Number 1. Number 2, the paper was able to trace down into the continental problem, in the national problem, in the regional, and in the local. So highlighting the problem, charting it from the global to the local will attain the relevance. So kung mabasa yun ng reviewer, wow, the author is very good. As you were able to present the scenario, and you also presented the literature gap or the gap in the research, and you identified what gap of research the paper is presenting and its significance later on to use utility and application, will have better appreciation and better appraisal of the reviewer. Okay? So for your introduction, ito muna po yung uunahin natin bago tayo pumunta doon sa statement of the problem ninyo, is start with the global and continental, regional, national, and local issues, or we call it as research problem that has local context. So if one is addressing in one of my papers published titled Use of Technology Tools in Ensuring Quality Publishable Journal Articles, it should start with the global context. So progress in the 21st century is impossible without research. Research is responsible for new products, new knowledge, new ways of undertaking projects. So how do you establish that your paper is anchored into a global or continental concern? At least you can present a respected global database highlighting the importance of the paper. So mostly naman sa atin sa education sector, ang lagi natin kinuha, UNESCO presents that UNESCO, no, if your research is focusing on international tests or assessment, so tests in international mathematics test or according to CIMEO, Inotech, these are the big words for a research, so that you can convince the people who will read your paper that your paper is introduction pa lang, trustworthy na siya. Trustworthy na yung paper mo. Take note, sino ang kinukuhang nag-a-advertise ng sabon? O yung safeguard natin. Bakit sino ang nag-a-advertise ng sabon na safeguard? Diba? Mga group of doctors, mga PAMET specialists. Because if the paper is, if you can convince that your paper is trusted by the specialists or the respected persons, the higher the credibility, the higher the chances it will be accepted. No? Kasi tayo, bakit natin binibili ang mga produkto? Kasi research-based yan, science-based yan. Diba? Bakit ako bumibili ng safeguard? 99.9% natatanggal ang germs. That's according to PAMET. Okay? Because we look at the authority behind. So introduction pa lang, may otoridad na yung paper mo, you were able to establish the credibility. So according to the European Commission report, in 2013, there is a strong link between scientific publication and national wealth. So just to present an example. Then, in the global context also, I want to see in your paper, in your introduction section, that you do not only come up with 1:1 correspondence of author, that yung iisa lang yung nakikita mong citation niya. No? See to it that you need to establish also the credibility, the dimensions of your introduction, wherein you were able to get the best ideas, or you were able to synthesize or to get information from other authors. For example, within the tertiary education system, research universities play a crucial role in the training the professionals, high-level specialists, scientists, researchers, needed by economy in generating new knowledge in support of national wealth and systems. Ardito et al. 2019, Disminka et al. In 2020. What would I mean with this? Meaning to say, if your paper is capable to present multiple authors in one statement with multiple authors, the credibility is there. Because kung iisa lang yung sinasabi mo na nagsasabi niyan, there are other studies who conducted before and after refuting that finding. So katulad dito, scientific publications and reputable journals are considered for global university ranking, University Times ranking, Shanghai World ranking, according to Campos Berella in 2020, Morrison 2017, Ruth Varnes in 2011, Noonan in 2018. What does it mean? It says that since 2018 and beyond, authors are already postulating and proving that scientific publication is considered for global university ranking. Okay? Is that like saying mining is detrimental to the society? Author year, author 1975, author 1980, author 1990, author 1999, author 2005, author 2010, author 2015, author 2011. If you presented your literature that way, meaning to say, since 1970, mining has been found already as detrimental to the society. Until this time, 2020, 2015 or 2022. So imagine your strategies, your moves in presenting the introduction is very powerful, impactful for the reviewer to see if the paper is capable to be published. Okay? So trace it in the global, continental, regional, national, and local issues. Of course, in presenting the research gap in the paper, after presenting it, you need also to find out, to show what is the research gap being addressed and the rationale of the study. For example, from the aforementioned studies carried by Rita, Bunsom, Sher, El Hilali, it becomes apparent thus innovative teaching strategies, technique, and literature are beneficial in enhancing the literary reading appreciation and performance of the students. Hence, the researcher becomes aware of the research gap regarding the limited literature teaching strategies. There is a need to conduct a study investigating the level of literary appreciation skills and reading performance of university students to propose number of innovative teaching strategies to improve students' literary appreciation skills. So, another paragraph should be the research gap. So, di ba na-present mo na yung introduction mo, starting from the global down to the local, present also the research gap. So, what is that research gap? Okay, so I want you to be aware, which will be the workshop for this morning, is to chart the research gap of your paper. Identify what is the research gap of your paper. Okay, so I will present to you the 7 research gaps by Miles in 2017. And so that you will have an idea kung ano yung gap ng research nyo ang ina-address niya kung ito ay research for publication. So according to Miles, the taxonomy research gap, there are 7. First is evidence gap. Second, knowledge gap. Practical knowledge gap. Methodological gap. Empirical gap. Theoretical gap. Population gap. Now, if you will ask me, sir, which gap will I choose? The gaps in your research is dependent on the availability of literature you synthesize and you review. You cannot come up with a methodological gap na sinasabi mo, your research is addressing this gap, or sinasabi nyo, this paper is the only paper ever conducted in the Philippines. No? You are plowing a statement na parang ikaw lang yung naging scientist na doon. So at least, for presenting the research gap of the paper, you must be able to identify what gap you have. Meaning to say, in one paper, it may not only have one gap. Pwede siyang 3 gaps ang ina-address mo, 4 na gaps, or better, ma-address mo yung 7 gaps na yan. Okay? So let's start with evidence gap. Evidence gap means new research finding contradicts widely accepted conclusions. That there are studies conducted that they have different findings. For example, is the male better than male in leadership management? We have so many studies proving that males are better, but there are also many studies proving that females are better leaders. Now, how will you package it as an evidence gap? Highlight the past studies and present what the studies have found and present your solution. So if this study is found out that 10 research articles you synthesize from Australia, sinasabi na ang mga lalaki ang best managers and leaders, at nakakita ka naman ng 10 articles na synthesize na sinasabi ang mga babae ay mas magaling sa lalaki in leadership and management, then in the Philippine context, what have been conducted about this? So there's an evidence gap, and you address this. You present it as a concern of your paper. Second, the knowledge gap, wherein, yung sabi ko kanina, many studies have been conducted about this, but no studies have been conducted using these variables. Okay? So, knowledge gap, talagang walang talagang research pa na nakandak about sa topic na yan. But you know, when you present per paragraph the gaps in your research, you should be strong and confident to tell that they are really the gaps. Third, practical to knowledge gap. Practical to knowledge gap. There's a gap between what is and what should be. So tends to be discrepancies that can motivate new research in this direction. So this is what the university is practicing, and this is what the literature is stating. So they are not doing there's a discrepancy between the two. So your paper might be good to address if it addresses the practical knowledge gap. Fourth, methodological gap. Methodological gap is that in all the studies you reviewed and synthesized, karamihan na ginamit ay puro quantitative at walang gumamit ng qualitative sa problem of inquiry na yan. You can state that in the as a methodological gap. Maganda po yan. No? Most of the studies conducted in the reading comprehension of the students is purely quantitative using descriptive correlational design. And there is a dearth of study utilizing structural equation modeling or ESD or exploratory sequential design. So you need also to discuss the merits and demerits. Okay, so methodological gap will be addressed. And number 5, the empirical gap is that no study directly attempted to evaluate or subjected the study in an empirical approach. Which is empirical approach in a scientific process, in a scientific manner. And number 6, theoretical gap is that the research is addressing the type of gap that deals with the gap in theory with the prior research.
Enhancement program? Bakit may program na?
And number 7,
napatanggal po yan ni Sir Abin.
the population gap is that the gap is the type of research regarding the population that is not adequately represented or under research in the evidence base or prior research. So population gap, you would always tell, this study on that speaking skill of the students is mainly, most of the studies are conducted only for the high school, but no studies is ever accounted for college level, for example. So there's a gap in the population that you would like to address, that if this is the gap, so you need to think of, you need to come up with a study to have a holistic view of the problem of inquiry. Okay, so my dear ladies and gentlemen, the 7 gaps should be identified as part of the article in your introduction, at titignan ko po yan sa presentation nyo isa-isa kung paano nyo present yung mga gaps na yan. Because the beginning of a research is the research gap for publication. Okay? So how do you write the research gap in journal article? Mamaya po mag-off po tayo for you to do your research gap statement. So it will be presented. I will choose Sir Aki, Sir Jeff. How do we facilitate the group output in this session?
We will be sending a Google Drive link for our participant to submit their output so that we can present that tomorrow for critiquing, Doc. And I will be giving you the link also for you to have it reviewed before the session tomorrow.
Okay. But we will have the session today for the workshop of
Yes.
writing the research gap in their paper.
Yes.
Okay. So how do you write the research gap in a journal article? So evidence gap is contradictory evidence gap. For example, you present this way: the researcher identified an apparent evidence gap in the prior research concerning blank. Previous research has addressed several aspects of blank. Cite 2 to 3 relevant articles. However, the previous study has not addressed several contradictions in the findings concerning the research, and the researcher has identified there is an evidence gap in the prior studies that are contradictory in the findings. So in just a paragraph that way, the reviewer will understand that the author have read intensively about the topic. For the knowledge gap, the researcher identified an apparent knowledge gap in the prior research concerning blank. In addition, the prior research did not address the subject of blank. This encompasses several unexplored dimensions that lately have attracted research attention in other disciplines, and the blank should be explored further to provide an understanding as to why such is not the case with blank. Okay lang po ba kayo? Okay. Next. This is how you will write a practical knowledge gap action to knowledge conflict gap. This appears to be a practical knowledge gap in the prior research. There is a lack of rigorous research in the prior literature. Some of these unexplored blank appear to be lacking in the practice of blank field. The field of blank is ripe for an investigation or practical focus research on blank. Many of the prior studies focus on theoretical aspects of the field. However, there are few practical studies and word of investigation in the context of blank, and an investigation of these issues is important because, state the reason, and further, previous theoretical research has focused primarily on the reason on blank, and very little practical research has been done on the blank. So it's up to you on how you will present the gaps in the literature. At least you listening researchers will be capable to identify what type of gap your research is addressing. And it should be stated in a paragraph. On the methodological gap or methodology void gap, the research identified a methodological gap in the prior research and there is a lack of blank research designs. Ito yung sasabi ko na karamihan sa research kasi na yan ay puro panty, puro poly, walang mixed methods, walang exploratory sequential design, walang SEM. So based on the research we are trying to implement as a research design, we found that there is a dirt in the prior research on the research design. In this study, we seek to establish a new inquiry on research design with blank. We seek to extend the research by addressing the gap with the blank and the blank with these methodologies. Okay? So yun po yung methodological gap. Second, next one is the empirical gap. Okay? May I request, sir, may I request a reader from the group? Sir Ayan, may I request you to please read the empirical gap statement?
Sir Ian Sabindan?
Any volunteer? Any volunteer so that mabasa po natin?
Yes,
Ayan,
sir.
Miss Cecilia Alagon?
Good morning po.
Good morning, ma'am.
Sige po, rinig po ako, no, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Opo.
Okay po. Empirical gap, evaluation void gap. There appears to be an empirical gap in the prior research. There is a lack of rigorous research in the prior literature. Some of these unexplored blank appear to be important and worthy of investigation in the context of blank. An empirical investigation of these issues is important because blank. Furthermore, previous research has focused primarily on qualitative research concerning blank. No study to date has directly attempted to empirically evaluate blank. Very little empirical research has been done on blank. Miles 2017.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you rin po.
Clear po yung pan natin, presentation ng empirical gap po natin. So, how we wish to see your papers is specifying the gaps in the paper. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next slide, please. Any volunteer, the theoretical gap?
We have Mr. Noel. Take it away.
Okay, good morning po. Friend po. So about theoretical gap theory application void gap. The researcher identified an apparent theoretical gap in the prior research concerning blank. The theory on blank is rather dated and the current studies bear the fruit of this theoretical gap. Some of the prior theory appear to be important and the foundation worthy of recognition. However, an investigation in terms of blank and theoretical development is warranted An investigation of these issues is important because blank. Furthermore, previous theoretical models need to embrace contemporary research in blank and related fields to provide a stronger theoretical basis for projects. The previous theory tends to focus primarily on blank. It does not encompass new paradigms in blank. So Miles 2017.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, sir. So what is our observation for the theoretical gap? It says that your paper is addressing a theory that has not been validated or to be validated with your research. So I hope pag makita po natin yan sa article ninyo, matutuwa ang reviewers dyan. Okay? Sige, next is population gap. Any volunteer? Any volunteer?
Christian.
Population gap under research subgroups gap. Based on the review of the prior research, there is a population gap. Some of these subpopulations have been unexplored and under research. The blank appear to be important and worthy of investigation in the context of blank. An investigation of this group is important because blank. Furthermore, previous research has focused primarily on this population of blank. Very little research has been done on blank. Miles 2017.
Thank you very much, Sir Christian. So, in the population gap, the researcher is capable and confident to tell that there's really a need for the study to be conducted into the other group or in a separate group that the previous studies were not able to address. Okay, so ito po yung mga research gap natin na ina-address natin. So in looking at the gaps in the literature, kasi 7 po ito, basing from the gap we have, we try to identify the value of the research. So from the continental perspective, from the international perspective to the regional, to the national, then presentation of the research gap is a requirement. So how I wish makita ko po yan sa article ninyo sa introduction section na isang paragraph siya at very clear na ina-explain nyo doon yung possible importance ng paper sa body of knowledge. Take note that the beginning of research article publication is not the problem itself, but the research gap in literature. So 7 research gap from Miles. You can adapt 2 to 3 or kahit ilan po ang gusto nyong i-adapt. Kung kaya nyong i-adapt yung 7 na yan na research gap sa article ninyo, the better. Okay? But it requires you to do more literature searches. Okay? Let's proceed. Having understood that there's a gap really in the literature, or if the study is anchored in a theoretical gap, then that there should be a theory or a paragraph in your introduction that the theory is anchored. So that theory is an explanation that your paper is based on a certain theory that you would like to test, you would like to validate in the context of the Filipino learners, in the context of the Filipino teachers. Then from that conceptual or theoretical framework you also have a conceptual or diagrammatic framework of the study wherein the author will discuss how the general theory is linked to the present study. And a brief description and discussion of the framework. So for example, what you can see is what you can see as a theory here is the technology acceptance theory of Davis, wherein it was utilized in one of the studies of my student in assessing the implementation of online learning system in the classroom. So online learning management system during the pandemic. And by adapting this kind of theory, she was able to present the variables of the study, how it was linked to the problem of inquiry being investigated. I think there's a question here. What if there is a combination of gaps? Will it be written one paragraph or separate paragraph? Thank you very much, Ma'am Genevieve, for that concern. If you are presenting two gaps, they should be presented in two paragraphs. Because, but if you are capable to condense them, no? Kung kaya mong i-condense yun sa isang paragraph, okay lang, but because magiging verbose later on, magiging punong-puno na yan ng author here yung paragraph na yan. So try to have a separate discussion of the gap in literature. Okay? So tapusin ko na muna itong discussion ng purposes, then workshop this afternoon is 11:44. So having identified the theoretical and conceptual framework of your study, depende po yan kung saan nakabitin yung study ninyo. For example, if you are, kung sa education context and you are teaching young children or you are teaching elementary learners, no, you can use the Piaget's theory. Okay, so from the theory, how do you contextualize the variables of the study? Next is the purposes of your objectives or writing your research objectives. So in the purposes of your research is just mainly stating the problem with the major goal of the study to be followed by specific objectives. There are studies conducted, published, that the profile variables of the respondents should no longer be part of the objectives of the study. Kasi I have read researches na pati yung what is the profile of the respondents nagiging purpose of the research. The purpose of that is that the profile of the respondents should already be transferred to the characteristics of the respondents in the sampling procedure in the methodology section. At doon mo na i-present yung profile variables nila. In that way, if I will be the reviewer, the better I will appreciate and understand that, the researcher got them as respondents because they have the following characteristics, blah, 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 blah. So, as for me, para sa akin, yung profile of the variables, huwag nyo na pong ilagay sa purpose of the study at huwag nyo na rin pong ilagay sa discussion of the findings. Ilagay nyo na lang yan sa respondents of the study and the profile characteristics. Para ang nandoon sa purpose of the study will be the main variables, the major variables you assessed. Okay? So for example, is this. The study really aims to ascertain the level of literary appreciation skills of the students with the end goal of proposing innovative learning tasks to enhance their literary appreciation skills. Specifically, it seeks to identify the students' perceived level of literary appreciation, determine the students' performance, ascertain the difference between students' performance and level of literary appreciation skills when grouped to gender, college departments, and test the significant relationship between the students' performance in literature and level of literary appreciation skills. So just a simple quantitative research, no, descriptive correlational research. Now, for the purpose of the study, to better present, this should be presented in a bulleted list or praise in the form of to determine, in objective form. Para hindi po siya magbukang statement of the problem ng thesis at dissertation. So, taasan natin yung level, gawing objective form, or make it purposes of the study. So, use the following phrase to determine, to investigate, to evaluate, to compare, to ascertain. And they should be listed on the order of importance from the most general to the most specific. It is a set of promises of the authors to its readers. Take note that the purpose of your study is the overarching blueprint for the author to understand the whole context of your research. One objective should be one single issue. Refrain from using and, or, as well as. Okay? Objectives should be logically flow from the problem statement or the core research problem. And please do not confuse research objectives with methodology. because research objective is different from methodology. Okay, so it should always be in the form of an objective structure or statement form. Okay, so having known this as a purpose study, let me finish this one because I will be giving you the activity. Is in the paper manuscript, the expectation is that half of your sources should be research review articles. Wherein, as I presented the research gap a while back, the author is ignorant if the manuscript or your research paper has no review articles. Take note that the review articles are review articles have written by authors synthesizing 250 to 500 research studies about a particular variable. For example, when you click on fisheries review article and your topic is all about fisheries, so education pala tayo, when you go to Google Scholar, it's basic, it's so basic that you click on the fisheries review articles, lahat ng lalabas na studies ay review articles. So kung classroom management review articles, classroom management review articles. Classroom management review articles in Asia, you should have a good classification of the continents, because continents may have similar or different findings. Classroom management review articles in Asia, classroom management review articles in Africa, classroom management review articles in United States. So for you to understand and to establish global dimension and perspective of your research. Okay, so with that, for example, climate change review articles, you can download. And in Google Scholar, is very clear naman, no? Baka mas expert pa po kayo na gumamit sa akin ng Google Scholar. So anytime, pwedeng since 2018, 2017, 2014, 2019, or 5 years back. Because a review article synthesizes and analyzes more than 250 paper articles. And there are two basic outputs for research articles. Review article synthesizes what already discovered in the field, and it defines what has not been discovered in the field or simply the gap in literature. So balik tayo doon sa 7 gaps of literature. You can directly address the gaps in literature by looking at the Google Scholar. But mind you, you should be very careful to choose what type of articles you are downloading kasi punong-puno rin ng predatory articles ang Google Scholar. So if you are certain enough that you are confident, you can validate na yung pinagkukuhanan mo na article or na journal is Scopus at Web of Science, please be sure to validate and check them. Okay? So the trend today in journal publication is that the beginning of research is not the problem, but the beginning of the research is the gap in literature. Pakibasa po. Pakibasa po lahat kayo.
The trend today.
O, pakibasa po lahat kayo. Kasi teacher po tayo. 1, 2, 3, go.
The trend today in
Journal publication is that the beginning of research is not the problem, but the beginning of research is the gap in literature.
Thank you very much po. Galing niyo pong magbasa. Okay, so the gap in literature. So I would like you to appreciate that you must be able to look at the gap of your papers. Yun po ang outcome natin for today. So what are the citable journal articles? First, review articles, methodological articles, and research articles. So pagpunta kayo sa Google Scholar, madali lang naman eh. Classroom management review articles, plus Asia, plus Philippines. Methodological articles, classroom management, plus Asia, plus Philippines. Mag-plus, plus, plus lang kayo. Research articles, plus Asia, plus Philippines, plus Antarctica. Kung gusto ninyo. Baka kung gusto po niyo i-compare yung classroom management nila sa Antarctica at sa atin, okay lang din yan. So provides the research strong grounding. The reason for this is that ikaw na researcher, you are provided with a strong grounding of knowledge on the research topic. So balik-balik ta rin po natin ang mundo, balik-balik ta rin kayo ng panel ninyo, hindi po kayo nawawala at confident kayo na your paper is addressing a gap. B, generates the research gaps in the study, and ikaw na researcher, because you knew what is new and what is not new about the paper, it gives you already the confidence that your paper is novel, establishing originality and novelty. Okay? So, siguro, mag-skip po tayo dito sa kwan. Saglit lang po ha, para ma-identify natin. Para mag-break po tayo, mag-resume po tayo ng alauna. Kasi wala po tayong merienda time kanina. We started at 9:30. So, to give you an idea, for your research output is for you to come up with your literature review matrix. Itutuloy ko po mamaya mag-lecture doon sa kwan natin, doon sa literature review. Okay. So one way for you to chart the problem, the research gap in your paper, is that you come up with your own literature review matrix. So what is this literature review matrix? So in a matrix, you have your, for example, you have 6 articles downloaded about the topic from Google Scholar. Google Scholar po muna tayo ngayon ha, bago tayo lilipat sa ibang database. Hanap po kayo ng 6 sa Google Scholar related sa topic ninyo. I-present nyo siya in a matrix like this. Then present the study parameters and variables. Focus on the objectives, the gap, and the findings. Then we will resume afterwards, after at 1 p.m. for the workshop 1 to 2, then continuous discussion for the literature gap. Okay? So, do we have concerns? May katanungan po ba kayo? Bago natin i-end ang session natin ngayong umaga. I want you to ask questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gilbert. No, so our participants will be provided by the attendance link this morning, as well as the Google Drive, wherein you can upload your output for Dr. Gilbert's review. No, and we have a message of appreciation from Dr. Ravelina Hacolbia. So thank you so much for giving us actual sample to address the research gap, Sir Gilbert. So actually, even me, no, natuto po ako, no, kung paano ba i-present pa ng mas maayos yung ating research gap, no. And we have a question coming from Miss Genevieve Kupang. What if there is a combination of gaps? Will it be written in one paragraph or separate paragraphs, no?
Okay, I think I was able to answer it kanina, ma'am. Ulitin mo na lang po yung ko dyan. If you are stating a separate gap, present it in a separate paragraph. Para hindi po siya ma-overload ng napakaraming literature yung isang paragraph na yan. So you can present it in 2 separate paragraphs.
All right. Any more questions from our participants? You can actually unmute your audio, or if you have some clarifications with regards to the topic discussed by our guest speaker. We also have a message of appreciation from Miss Virginia Danganan. Thanks a million, Director Gilbert, and thank you so much for answering daw po, sabi ni Miss Genevieve. And by the way, no, our participants who submitted their paper will be provided a certificate of completion after this workshop. And for those who participated, no, without their paper submitted, you will be getting a certificate of participation afterwards. And we already provided the link for our attendance for day 1. And Doc Gilbert, I think, as mentioned by our project head, Sir Jefferson Serrano, will be having our asynchronous session at 1 p.m. For them to enhance the paper, particularly in the research gap presentation, as well as the matrix of literature. So we'll be giving enough time for our participants to do their output, no, so we can actually present that tomorrow po before we continue our session. Is that okay po, Sir Gilbert?
Yes, ma'am. I am now sending the form for the research gap identification.
Okay po.
Ilagay ko lang po, ha. Form. Okay po. Ito po yung gagamitin ninyong while i-send ko na lang po sa PUP group na lang. Hindi ko po ma-attach dito. Sige po. So the expected task is, I hope you will be able to chart the research gap in your paper. And we want to see how you will write the research gap in your paper and how you address it. And we will have continuation of the session. Ang pag-fill nyo muna po ng research gap nyo ay gagamitin muna po yung Google Scholar. So 6 to 10 articles related to your topic so that you will be able to identify. But I want you already to have, no, kung ano ba yung gap na gusto nyong ipakita sa research ninyo. So 7 po yun, mamili po kayo kung anong gap yung gusto nyong ipakita. Yun po. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doc Gilbert. And a reminder also to our participants, particularly for those who submitted their paper, make sure that you have registered in the link provided by your faculty researchers in order for us to provide the link for this session, particularly the video presentation, the Google Drive, as well as the PowerPoint presentation of our dear speaker. So may I request everyone if you can actually open your camera for our photo opportunity with our dearest guest speaker. Sir Jefferson, kindly take over the photo opportunity. Thank you.
Sa count of 3 po, meron tayong 2 slides. Ayan. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Wait lang po. Next. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much po.
Thank you so much once again, Sir Jefferson Serrano. Tomorrow we'll be having our session, particularly in a detailed presentation about the literature review, theoretical and conceptual frameworks, as well as how we design our research, the context of participants, as well as how we deal with the research instrument and data collection, and of course, the different methodologies, particularly in the quantitative and the qualitative approach, as well as the data analysis. So once again, for all our participants who submitted their paper, make sure that you registered in the link provided by the faculty researcher in order for us to send the link for the Google Drive wherein you can upload the output for review of our guest speaker. Maraming salamat at magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Tanghali pala, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gilbert, and see you tomorrow.